The heavy oak doors of the courtroom creaked open as Marcus Grant stepped inside, his stride measured but unshaken. He was a tall black man, dressed sharply in a navy suit that fit him with quiet confidence. His gaze swept across the room, lingering briefly on the judge who sat elevated on the bench. Judge Whitmore, a stern-faced man with years of authority behind him, leaned forward, eyes narrowing as Marcus approached the defendant's table. The air was tense. Murmurs filled the gallery. Whispers of another young black man in trouble rippled among those watching. To them, Marcus looked like any other defendant about to be crushed by the weight of the system. No one noticed the thick case file he carried or the polished briefcase he placed neatly on the table. The judge, however, did not wait for introductions. His voice thundered across the chamber. "Mr. Grant, I've seen your kind too many times. Men who think they can play with the law, abuse their community, and then come here asking for leniency." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The gavel slammed. "For the crimes presented before this court, I sentence you to 20 years in federal prison." The gallery gasped. A woman in the back covered her mouth in shock. But Marcus didn't flinch. He simply stood tall, his eyes steady. Slowly he adjusted his tie and opened the case file, sliding it onto the table with deliberate precision. "Your Honor," he said calmly, his voice carrying authority that silenced the murmurs. "Before we proceed further, there's something you need to understand." Judge Whitmore's brow furrowed, irritation flashing in his eyes. He leaned forward, but Marcus's next words froze him in place. "I am not the defendant. I am the lead prosecutor in this case." The courtroom seemed to freeze. A sudden hush swept over the gallery as Judge Whitmore's gavel hovered mid-air, forgotten. Marcus's calm declaration hung in the room like a weight too heavy to ignore. For a moment, it was as if time itself had paused. Whispers erupted, stifled by shocked gasps. The spectators exchanged confused glances. A few reporters quickly scribbled notes, realizing that the scene unfolding was far from ordinary. Even the defendant, a young man with nervous eyes, leaned forward, unsure if he had heard correctly. Judge Whitmore's face went pale. His mouth opened, then closed again. He cleared his throat, struggling to regain the air of authority he usually carried effortlessly. You're the lead prosecutor?" he asked, his voice uneven, betraying the sudden uncertainty gnawing at him. Marcus nodded, the slightest trace of a smile forming. "Yes, Your Honor. I've been representing the United States in this matter. I am responsible for ensuring justice is served in this very courtroom." The judge swallowed hard, shifting in his chair. His previous confidence, so dominant and unshakable, now faltered. Every word Marcus spoke chipped away at the image of control Whitmore had maintained for decades. A court clerk peeked nervously over her desk, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. The tension was palpable. No one dared interrupt Marcus as he continued. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding, Your Honor. I am not a defendant, and this sentence is misdirected." Whitmore's hands trembled slightly as he tapped the gavel against the desk. The sound, once commanding, now rang hollow. He cleared his throat again, this time quieter, weaker, a man suddenly aware of the weight of his mistake. Marcus remained composed, letting the silence press on, each second emphasizing the gravity of the moment. Every eye in the room was fixed on the judge, waiting for his next move. After a long pause, Whitmore finally spoke, his voice strained. I need a moment." The courtroom murmurs turned into a low hum of anticipation. Marcus simply nodded, allowing the judge to wrestle with the truth he had just uncovered. Judge Whitmore rose slowly from his bench, his hands gripping the polished wood as if it could anchor him amidst the sudden storm of realization. His eyes, once sharp and commanding, now darted nervously across the courtroom. He glanced at the clerks, the gallery, even the defendant, but none of them offered solace. Only Marcus sat there, poised, eyes calm, exuding an unshakable authority. "Mr. Grant," Whitmore began, his voice wavering, This is highly irregular." Marcus leaned slightly forward, his hands folded neatly on the table. "Your Honor, it appears there was a misunderstanding regarding my role in this case. I am the lead prosecutor assigned to this matter. I am here to ensure justice is carried out, not to be punished by it." The judge's throat worked silently, swallowing hard. The weight of the courtroom's eyes pressed down on him. He had delivered a harsh sentence with no idea who he was addressing. 20 years, handed down without a second thought, now felt like a misstep that could not be undone easily. Murmurs rose again, softer this time, as the gallery processed the revelation. Some exchanged uneasy glances, others nodded in silent agreement with Marcus's poised demeanor. Whitmore took a deep breath and tried to reclaim his composure. "This situation requires review. I will confer with the court administration immediately. Mr. Grant, I apologize for this error." Marcus inclined his head, expression neutral. "Acknowledgement is appreciated, Your Honor. However, let us proceed with the case in its proper order. There is much work to be done." The judge nodded, still shaken. For the first time in his decades-long career, he realized that authority without awareness could lead to humiliation, not respect. He retreated slightly, his voice quieter, cautious. As Whitmore stepped down from the bench briefly to confer with the clerks, Marcus watched silently. His presence alone had already begun to shift the dynamics of the room, reminding everyone that true power lay not in intimidation, but in knowledge and calm resolve. The courtroom buzzed with restrained excitement, the whispers weaving a tense undercurrent throughout the room. Spectators craned their necks to catch glimpses of Marcus Grant, the man who had just unmasked the authority of the judge with nothing but a statement of fact. His calm confidence contrasted sharply with Judge Whitmore's flustered demeanor, and the difference did not go unnoticed. Reporters jotted furiously, sensing a story far more compelling than the case itself. "Lead prosecutor misidentified as defendant," one muttered. "Judge blindsided," another whispered. Cameras clicked discreetly, capturing the rare spectacle of judicial uncertainty. The defendant, a young man named Tyrone Wells, watched the exchange with growing disbelief. Only moments ago, he had assumed Marcus was on trial. Now, the reality that this was a mistake, a grave one, shifted his perspective entirely. Gratitude flickered across his face, though he remained silent, unsure how to process the sudden reversal of roles. Whitmore returned to the bench, shuffling papers as though doing so might restore some semblance of control. His eyes avoided Marcus's steady gaze. "We will resume proceedings," he said, his voice lacking its usual conviction. I must ensure that all actions moving forward are proper and accurate." Marcus nodded once, crisp and deliberate. "That is all I ask, Your Honor. Justice must be based on facts, not assumptions or appearances. I am prepared to continue with the case and ensure that the truth is served." A clerk cleared her throat nervously, handing the judge a fresh set of files. Whitmore's hands shook slightly as he took them, and for a fleeting moment the courtroom saw the man behind the robe, a human grappling with the humbling weight of his error. The gallery remained tense, eyes flitting between judge and prosecutor. Marcus, still composed, closed his briefcase and leaned back slightly, a quiet authority radiating from him. Every movement, deliberate and calm, reinforced a truth the room could not ignore. Power was meaningless without understanding, and respect was earned through composure and competence. Judge Whitmore took a deep breath, attempting to steady his thoughts. The courtroom's murmurs had grown louder, but he forced himself to focus on the matter at hand. This was no longer about appearances. It was about procedure, legality, and restoring the dignity of the court. "Mr. Grant," the judge began, his voice steadier but still tinged with unease, I must clarify the record. There has been a grave misunderstanding, and I wish to correct it immediately. You are not, and have never been, a defendant in this courtroom." Marcus nodded, his posture unwavering. "Thank you, Your Honor. The clarification is noted. Let us proceed with the matter at hand. The case requires diligent attention, and no personal misjudgment should hinder justice." The judge's eyes briefly flicked to the defendant, Tyrone Wells, who sat quietly, processing the turn of events. For the first time, Whitmore noticed the apprehension and anxiety that had marked Tyrone's demeanor. He felt a twinge of guilt, realizing that his initial assumption and harsh sentence could have caused irreparable harm. Whitmore adjusted his robe and leaned forward, clearing his throat. "I will take full responsibility for the error. The court will officially document that Mr. Grant is the lead prosecutor. Any prior statements or judgments will be considered null regarding him." Marcus's calm expression remained unchanged, yet the authority in his voice carried weight. "Your acknowledgement is appreciated. Let us ensure that the case proceeds efficiently and that justice is served for the community." The courtroom's atmosphere shifted slightly. The tension remained, but the edges softened. The spectators and clerks alike recognized the unspoken lesson unfolding. Assumptions can mislead even the most powerful, and humility is an essential part of authority. Judge Whitmore exhaled slowly, attempting to center himself. Marcus's presence reminded him, and everyone present, that true respect is earned through competence, not intimidation. With that, the proceedings slowly began to move forward, the weight of earlier tension lingering like a shadow, but now tempered by clarity and recognition. The courtroom settled into a cautious rhythm, though the memory of the earlier revelation lingered like a quiet hum. Judge Whitmore's hands rested on the bench, clasped tightly as if grounding himself in the wood could restore his confidence. Every movement was deliberate, measured, reflecting the humility now guiding his actions. Marcus sat at the prosecutor's table, reviewing documents with the same calm focus that had unsettled the judge moments before. Every page he turned, every note he scribbled, radiated quiet authority. He did not raise his voice, did not demand attention, yet the room could feel his presence, strong, steady, unyielding. The gallery whispered again, but this time the words carried awe rather than tension. Observers noted the stark contrast between Marcus's composed control and Whitmore's earlier uncertainty. Here was a man who commanded respect through preparation, knowledge, and calm restraint, not through intimidation or assumption. Whitmore cleared his throat, attempting to regain the command expected of his office. "Mr. Grant, I will rely on your guidance as we proceed. Your expertise is clear, and the court will follow the proper procedure under your counsel." Marcus inclined his head, acknowledging the judge's words. "Thank you, Your Honor. Let us ensure the case moves forward correctly. Justice must remain impartial, free of bias or misjudgment." The defendant, Tyrone Wells, now visibly relieved, glanced at Marcus with newfound respect. For him, the earlier fear had transformed into confidence that the system, though flawed, could correct itself with competent guidance. The courtroom clerk adjusted papers nervously, aware that she had witnessed a rare event, the unmasking of an assumption so strong that it nearly led to injustice. She, like everyone else, now understood that authority carries responsibility and that humility is essential when wielding it. Marcus's calm demeanor, combined with his clear intellect, set the tone for the proceedings. Judge Whitmore, humbled yet resolute, prepared to resume the session with a newfound awareness of his own fallibility. The courtroom had seen a lesson in authority, one that would linger long after the gavel fell. The courtroom's energy had subtly changed. Where tension and apprehension had once dominated, there was now a cautious respect, a recognition that Marcus Grant's presence and professionalism demanded it. Judge Whitmore sat straighter, though his earlier unease still lingered in the corners of his eyes. He had faced many cases in his career, but few had confronted him with such undeniable clarity. Marcus reviewed the evidence with meticulous precision, presenting each point with calm authority. The lawyers on both sides leaned forward, taking notes, absorbing the clarity of his reasoning. Even the defendant, Tyrone Wells, watched closely, realizing that Marcus was not just a figure of authority, he was a beacon of fairness in a system that often faltered. Whitmore cleared his throat, breaking the brief silence. "Mr. Grant, your preparation and understanding are impressive. I can see now that assumptions clouded my judgment earlier. I appreciate your patience and your professionalism in this matter." Marcus gave a polite nod, his composure unwavering. "Acknowledgement of the facts and adherence to procedure are critical, Your Honor. Justice is not served by assumptions or hasty conclusions." The gallery murmured again, this time with a sense of intrigue rather than shock. Everyone could sense that something extraordinary had occurred. A judge had been humbled, not by scandal or force, but by quiet competence and undeniable authority. Even the young defendant, Tyrone, felt a shift in his perception. Fear had transformed into confidence. He now trusted that, with Marcus leading the prosecution, the case would be conducted fairly, and that his voice would be heard. Whitmore glanced at Marcus one last time before standing. "We will proceed properly, with the case evaluated on facts and evidence alone. I will ensure no further mistakes compromise the integrity of this courtroom." Marcus allowed himself a slight nod, signaling agreement. The message was clear: respect is earned, assumptions are dangerous, and the true measure of authority lies in preparation, integrity, and calm decisiveness. The courtroom settled into a focused quiet as the case resumed. Judge Whitmore, still visibly humbled, carefully reviewed the files in front of him. Marcus Grant sat at the prosecutor's table, radiating the same calm authority that had earlier silenced the room. Every movement, every word, reinforced the lesson that had been delivered silently but powerfully. Assumptions can mislead even the most experienced. Tyrone Wells, the defendant, watched Marcus with a mix of awe and relief. Moments ago, he had feared being crushed by a harsh system. Now he saw a man who understood the law, who commanded respect not through fear, but through preparation and integrity. The gallery remained attentive, whispers softening to a low murmur of curiosity. Even the court reporters seemed to sense the historic moment unfolding before them. Cameras clicked discreetly, capturing a scene rarely seen, a courtroom where authority had been quietly corrected, and respect earned the right way. Judge Whitmore cleared his throat, finally regaining a steadier voice. "Let us proceed carefully," he said. "All arguments and motions will be considered with proper review and fairness." Marcus inclined his head once, acknowledging the judge's statement. "That is all I request, Your Honor. Fair proceedings and adherence to justice must guide this case." The clerk shuffled papers nervously, ensuring the files were in correct order. Every detail mattered now, and Marcus's presence reminded the court of the importance of diligence. For the first time that day, Whitmore felt the weight of humility and the relief of clarity. The lesson had been delivered, not through confrontation, but through composed authority. As the first witness prepared to testify, Marcus adjusted his tie and reviewed his notes, fully aware that the courtroom's eyes were on him. Not as a defendant, not as a mere figure of authority, but as a symbol of competence, fairness, and unwavering dedication to justice. The first witness, a middle-aged man with nervous hands, took the stand. He cleared his throat and glanced nervously at both the judge and Marcus. The room seemed to hold its breath, aware that this case had already shifted the balance of authority and respect. Marcus rose smoothly, his presence commanding attention without raising his voice. "Please state your name and occupation for the record," he said calmly, gesturing to the witness. "Samuel Hayes, Community Liaison Officer," the man replied, voice trembling slightly. He shifted in his seat, clearly anxious under the weight of the courtroom's attention. "Mr. Hayes," Marcus continued, his tone even and deliberate, "can you recount the events of the evening in question with as much detail as possible?" As Samuel described the incident, Marcus listened carefully, nodding slightly to indicate understanding. Each question he asked was precise, designed to clarify the facts without intimidation. The contrast between his calm professionalism and the judge's earlier misstep could not have been more apparent. Judge Whitmore watched silently, absorbing the scene. He realized that Marcus's approach was not just effective, it was exemplary. Authority was not about harsh sentences or assumptions, it was about clarity, fairness, and patience. Every word Marcus spoke demonstrated that he had earned the respect of the court, the gallery, and even the defendant. Tyrone Wells's eyes followed Marcus closely, silently recognizing the difference between a courtroom dominated by fear and one led by competence. Each testimony, each question, reinforced the notion that justice was not simply enforced, it was carefully guided by knowledge and integrity. As the witness finished, Marcus thanked him politely, guiding the process forward with quiet assurance. The courtroom now moved at a measured, respectful pace, and even the murmurs of the gallery had shifted from gossip to admiration. Judge Whitmore cleared his throat again, acknowledging that the proceedings had taken on a new gravity. Marcus's presence had transformed not only the courtroom's energy, but the very meaning of authority within it. As the courtroom paused briefly between witnesses, Judge Whitmore leaned back slightly, his eyes fixed on Marcus Grant. The weight of earlier events lingered in his mind. For decades he had wielded authority with confidence, often unquestioned. Yet, today, he had been confronted with a truth he could not ignore. Assumptions and prejudice could undermine even the highest office. Marcus remained seated at the prosecutor's table, reviewing notes quietly. His composed demeanor was a silent reminder to Whitmore and the entire courtroom that true power lay not in fear, but in preparation and integrity. The judge's thoughts drifted to the harsh sentence he had almost delivered incorrectly. 20 years, it had felt final, irrevocable, and yet it had been based on a mistaken perception. Whitmore's hands rested lightly on the bench, gripping the wood as if to anchor himself. He reflected on the responsibility of his position, realizing that authority without humility was a dangerous thing. Marcus's calm and unwavering presence had delivered a lesson more profound than any reprimand or critique could. Across the room, Tyrone Wells observed the subtle tension, sensing the judge's inner reckoning. He had once feared that the courtroom would be his downfall. Now, witnessing Whitmore's reflection, he felt a cautious sense of hope. Justice, though imperfect, was guided by those who respected its weight. Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, the courtroom functions best when authority is exercised with care, fairness, and respect for every individual. The role of justice is to serve truth, not assumption." Whitmore nodded, swallowing hard. He realized that today had become a turning point, not just for the case, but for his own understanding of leadership and responsibility. Marcus's presence had challenged his assumptions, reshaped his perspective, and subtly transformed the energy of the entire courtroom. As the next witness prepared, Whitmore adjusted his robe and took his seat with renewed purpose. The lesson was clear. Authority tempered with respect and awareness commanded far greater influence than mere titles ever could. The clerk called the next exhibit forward, and Marcus carefully examined the documents, laying them neatly on the table. His methodical approach commanded quiet attention. Every paper, every photograph, every detail mattered, and Marcus ensured nothing was overlooked. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, observing Marcus with a mix of awe and lingering discomfort. He had spent years presiding over cases, but he had rarely encountered someone who could embody authority so quietly, yet so completely. Marcus's calm control had reshaped the room. The earlier tension had transformed into focus and respect. Marcus addressed the courtroom, his voice steady. "We will examine these exhibits thoroughly, ensuring that all facts are accurately represented and considered. Justice requires no shortcuts, no assumptions, only careful review and transparency." The gallery fell silent, watching as Marcus guided the process. The defendant, Tyrone Wells, now sat straighter, feeling the fairness Marcus brought to the proceedings. He could see that this was not a courtroom dominated by intimidation, but one where knowledge and preparation commanded authority. Whitmore cleared his throat, his tone subdued. "Proceed, Mr. Grant. Your handling of these materials is exemplary. I will follow your lead to ensure proper review." Marcus nodded once, expression neutral yet firm. "Thank you, Your Honor. Accuracy is paramount. Every action we take here must reflect the law and the truth." As the exhibits were reviewed, the murmurs in the gallery shifted to whispers of admiration. Observers were witnessing a rare display of competence and poise, an unspoken lesson on how authority should be exercised. Each item carefully examined, each fact methodically verified, reinforced the lesson of the day: preparation and integrity outweigh assumptions and arrogance. The courtroom had transformed, not through force or intimidation, but through Marcus Grant's unwavering professionalism. Even Judge Whitmore, once so confident in his authority, recognized the quiet power of knowledge, humility, and composure, qualities that would guide the rest of the proceedings. The courtroom atmosphere had shifted entirely. Where tension and uncertainty had dominated earlier, there was now a quiet respect that permeated every corner. Judge Whitmore, though still processing the morning's events, approached the proceedings with renewed awareness. Every decision he made now carried the weight of careful consideration. Marcus Grant continued to guide the case with unwavering composure. Every question, every observation was delivered with precision, ensuring that the facts were presented clearly and fairly. The gallery watched intently, realizing that Marcus was more than a prosecutor. He was a model of professionalism, integrity, and quiet authority. Even the defendant, Tyrone Wells, could not hide his admiration. Fear had transformed into trust as he understood that the process was now in capable hands. The courtroom, once dominated by assumptions and misunderstanding, was now guided by competence and respect. Whitmore, adjusting his glasses, cleared his throat. "Mr. Grant, I must acknowledge that your conduct today has changed my perspective. Your professionalism sets a standard that I will strive to uphold." Marcus nodded, his expression neutral yet firm. "Thank you, Your Honor. The law functions best when all parties act with fairness and respect, and when authority is exercised with knowledge rather than assumption." The gallery remained silent, absorbing the exchange. The lesson was clear. True authority did not come from imposing fear or delivering harsh sentences. It came from preparation, integrity, and the ability to command respect without demanding it. Whitmore exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his shoulders. He realized that this day had become more than a trial. It had become a moment of learning, humility, and reflection. Marcus's presence had transformed the courtroom, reminding everyone present that the essence of justice is rooted in fairness and understanding, not in appearances or assumptions. As the next segment of the trial began, Whitmore found himself observing Marcus with a sense of respect he had rarely experienced in his career. The balance of authority had shifted, and the courtroom was better for it. The trial neared its conclusion, and Marcus Grant prepared for his closing arguments. The courtroom had settled into a focused silence, every eye watching him intently. There was an unspoken understanding among the spectators. Marcus had already transformed the energy of this room, and his words would leave a lasting impression. He stood, briefcase in hand, and addressed the court with calm authority. "Your Honor, members of the jury, today we have examined evidence, listened to testimony, and reviewed facts thoroughly. This case is not just about the actions of one individual. It is about justice, fairness, and the careful consideration of truth." Tyrone Wells listened closely, sensing that Marcus's words were guiding the courtroom toward clarity and impartiality. The gallery remained silent, captivated by the deliberate cadence of his speech. Marcus continued, "Authority is not measured by power or assumptions. It is measured by preparation, integrity, and the ability to recognize and correct mistakes. Today, we have seen the importance of careful judgment, respect for procedure, and unwavering commitment to the law." Judge Whitmore's eyes followed Marcus intently. He had felt the weight of his earlier misjudgment, but Marcus's steady presence had guided the court back to fairness and propriety. The gavel, once a symbol of unquestioned power, now represented balance and thoughtful deliberation. Marcus concluded, "Let the decisions made here reflect truth, not perception. Let justice prevail, guided by knowledge, fairness, and respect." He returned to his seat, composed and unwavering. The courtroom remained quiet for a long moment, absorbing the gravity of his words. Even Judge Whitmore felt a sense of humility and clarity he had not experienced in years. The trial had become more than a legal proceeding. It had become a lesson in authority, fairness, and the enduring power of integrity. Marcus Grant had demonstrated that true leadership required more than position. It demanded calm competence and unwavering dedication to justice. The jury filed back into the courtroom, their expressions serious. The air was thick with anticipation. Judge Whitmore cleared his throat, his hands resting lightly on the bench, aware that the courtroom had witnessed more than just a trial. It had witnessed a shift in authority and understanding. The foreperson stood. "Your Honor, we have reached a verdict." Marcus Grant straightened, his calm presence radiating through the room. Tyrone Wells sat tensely, though the respect he felt for Marcus gave him a quiet steadiness. Whitmore's eyes, once brimming with certainty, now reflected humility and attentiveness. The foreperson continued, "We find the defendant guilty as charged on the evidence presented." A subtle ripple passed through the gallery. The verdict was expected, but the focus had long since shifted from the outcome to the process itself. Marcus nodded, acknowledging the jury's careful deliberation. He had guided the courtroom not only to justice but to fairness, demonstrating that authority exercised with respect and knowledge outweighed assumptions or haste. Judge Whitmore addressed the room, his voice steadier now. "This court recognizes the lessons learned today. Mr. Grant's conduct has reminded us all that authority must be tempered with awareness, preparation, and integrity. Let today's proceedings stand as a reminder that true justice requires humility as much as power." Marcus inclined his head slightly, expression composed. "Thank you, Your Honor. Justice functions best when every individual is respected and when decisions are guided by truth and fairness, not assumption." As the courtroom began to disperse, Tyrone Wells approached Marcus briefly. "Thank you," he said quietly, a mixture of relief and admiration in his voice. "I could see the difference you made." Marcus offered a faint smile. "Justice is not about me. It's about fairness, clarity, and diligence. Remember that." Judge Whitmore watched the scene unfold, silently acknowledging the lesson. Today had changed more than a case. It had changed perspectives, reshaped authority, and reminded everyone that respect, preparation, and integrity are the true foundations of justice.